In the new timeline, gates begin to appear, and one day, Suho's university is attacked by Mistborn. Suho fights against a Mistborn and becomes a player. Despite his newfound abilities, he struggles to defeat a C-rank Mistborn. Suddenly, Beru arrives to rescue him and swiftly kills the C-rank Mistborn. Beru stays by Suho's side, and they both head to the Shadow Dungeon. Suho receives a quest to defeat the goblins. He fights through the dungeon and successfully defeats all of the goblins. As a reward, the system grants him the Shadow Extraction skill. The system requests Suho to use a command to activate the skill. Suho chooses Arise as his command and successfully extracts the shadows. Few shadows of goblins arise, and Suho feels less impressed than he expected upon seeing them. Beru explains that shadows are weaker compared to when they were alive and also appear smaller. Suho feels irritated after learning that the shadows will disappear after one day. Beru asks if Suho has the shadow storage skill, and Suho responds that he does not. Beru becomes sad and explains that Suho's low intelligence stat might be the reason behind it. He tries to reassure Suho by explaining that shadow extraction will be very useful in the future. Suho requests Beru not to feel sad for him. Suddenly, Suho feels starving and remembers that he has not eaten anything for the past 2 days. He asks if there is a way to leave the Shadow Dungeon, and Beru suggests using the Shadow Key to exit. Suho uses the key and leaves the dungeon to eat hospital food. He enjoys the food very much, and Beru feels surprised by Suho's reaction. Beru explains their next steps and mentions that there are 3 missions. He advises the first mission to protect the Earth from outer space monsters. Suho decides to grow stronger by hunting magic beasts in the Shadow Dungeon. Beru agrees and advises him to level up further to make the Earth a safer place. The second mission is to find Chahayan, and the third is to restore Beru's powers. Beru feels upset that the system ranks him as a private grade and expresses his desire to show his true powers to his young monarch. He decides to regain mana by consuming magic beasts and gathering knowledge about their targets. Beru admits that this method is inefficient, but he has no other choice since he is not receiving mana from the Shadow Monarch. Suho finishes eating and prepares to hunt magic beasts. However, Beru advises him to get a hunter's license to enter dungeons and suggests heading to the Hunters Association. Suho believes he might be as strong as an S-rank hunter, but is shocked to find that his magic level is only 46, making him an E-rank hunter. He feels disheartened after realizing his rank, and Beru tries to comfort him by explaining that the Hunters Association determines ranks based on magic power. Beru adds that Suho's increased strength points might have reduced his magic power. Suho responds that Beru's attempts to comfort him only make him feel worse. He loses confidence in his ability to protect the Earth as an E-rank hunter and worries that he might not be able to enter dungeons to level up. He knows that E-rank and F-rank hunters are rarely hired by raiding parties. Suddenly, Suho remembers that he can enter dungeons by joining either a hauling team or a mining team. He decides to join a mining team along with his teacher Lim, who is also an E-rank hunter. Suho feels grateful to know at least one awakened person in the mining team and begins mining mana crystals. Suddenly, Lim calls out to Suho and bows his head to apologize for running away from the magic beasts. Lim admits that as the only hunter in the university, he felt scared and ran away. Suho requests Lim to raise his head and tries to comfort him by explaining that the Hunters Association advises E-rank hunters to run from magic beasts. Lim feels shocked to learn that Suho is also an E-rank hunter. Suho informs him that his magic level is only 46, which is very low for an E-rank hunter. Lim realizes that Suho's magic level is even lower than his own and finds it hard to believe since he saw Suho fighting a magic beast while running away. Lim feels impressed that an E-rank hunter survived fighting magic beasts. Suddenly, Beru speaks up and agrees with Lim. Lim panics upon seeing Beru. Suho questions why Beru appeared suddenly, and Beru explains that he worries about Suho's safety since he is too weak right now. Beru expresses his desire to protect Suho by staying by his side. Lim assumes that Suho has awakened as a summoner and mentions that he has a running skill. Suho jokingly comments that Lim is very skilled at running away. Lim feels depressed upon hearing this, and Suho quickly explains that he was only joking. Suho looks around and realizes that this is his first time inside an actual dungeon. Meanwhile, the scene shifts to a group of hunters exploring a dungeon. They feel confused about why they cannot find any magic beasts other than wolves. Suddenly, one of them discovers something inside the dungeon, and they all move closer to investigate. They find a large sword and believe it to be a treasure. The hunters feel excited, thinking they have hit the jackpot. One of the hunters warns that there might be traps, but Kim grabs the sword anyway. Kim believes that he can handle the sword's power since he is a C-rank tank-type hunter. Suddenly, he finds himself in a dark and haunted place. He pulls out the sword, and the others feel relieved that there are no traps. However, Kim unexpectedly kills one of the hunters using the sword. Apparently, the sword belongs to the Monarch of Fangs. Kim keeps hearing a command to kill all the hunters in the domain of the Monarch of Fangs, and brutally kills every single one of them. Meanwhile, a few miners feel confused that Suho can summon goblins and watch as the shadows continue mining under Beru's supervision. supervision. Lim feels that Suho's powers are abnormal for an E-rank hunter, since he summoned 3 magic beasts while most hunters can only summon 2. Suho thinks to himself that it is convenient to summon minions to perform manual labor without complaints. He agrees with Beru's earlier comment that shadow extraction is a very useful technique. However, Beru feels slightly agitated that Suho only agrees after using the shadows for tedious tasks. Beru remembers the 3rd mission to recover his mana and mentions to Suho that he needs to regain his powers. He explains that he can restore his strength by consuming mana crystals. Suho jokingly commands Beru to eat some magic stones since he is already being useless. Suddenly, Beru senses the presence of a monarch inside the dungeon and warns Suho. Suho wonders if it might be his father, but Beru clarifies that it is not his father and that the person only holds the power of a monarch. All the hunters sense a strange presence inside the dungeon and see a group of steel-fanged Lycans. The miners panic upon seeing the Lycans and decide to run away. However, one miner gets left behind and tries to fight the magic beast with his pickaxe. The Lycan breaks the pickaxe into pieces, but Suho comes to his rescue and strikes the Lycan with his own pickaxe. The magic beast screams in pain, and Suho advises the miner to escape the dungeon while he keeps the Lycans busy. Suho notices that the steel-fanged Lycans are orange in color and realizes they are on the same power level as the D-rank magic beasts he fought at the university. He feels confident that he can handle them, but feels awkward using his real powers in front of his teacher. Suho suggests Lim run away, but Lim refuses and insists on helping Suho in the fight. Suho agrees, but asks him to help him only if he is in danger. Suho brings out a goblin weapon he gathered in the dungeon, and Lim is shocked to see that Suho can even summon weapons. Suho charges at the Lycans and kills one of them with a single strike. The goblin shadows feel proud watching their master swiftly kill the magic beasts. Suho extracts the shadow of the killed Lycan, and one of the goblin shadows gets released from his collection since he does not have enough storage to hold all the shadows. The rest of the shadows and Lim are shocked by this. Suho continues attacking the second Lycan, while the Lycan shadow fights the third one. Beru feels impressed that Suho has already adapted to fighting with shadow authority. Suho feels satisfied with the Lycan shadow and decides to create an army of shadows once he gains more mana. He swiftly defeats the second Lycan with a single strike to its mouth and extracts its shadow. The second goblin shadow gets released, and the remaining goblin shadow starts crying. Suho levels up and defeats the final Lycan as well. Lim calls out to Suho and cannot believe that he is just an E-rank hunter after witnessing his ability to control dead magic beasts. Suho feels unsure how to explain his abilities and decides to stick with the original explanation that he is still an E-rank hunter. Lim suspects that Suho might be hiding his true rank. Suddenly, Suho receives a quest from the system to defeat an enemy who wants to kill him. The system warns him to stay on guard and eliminate the threat. Suho remains cautious and sees Hunter Kim from the strike squad walking toward him. Lim tries to explain everything that has happened to Hunter Kim, but Suho warns him to stop approaching. Suddenly, Hunter Kim attacks with his sword, and Suho pulls Lim back just in time. Lim falls unconscious, and Suho commands his shadows to attack Hunter Kim. Suho feels frustrated that hunters keep turning into magic beasts. He notices that Hunter Kim's color is reddish and realizes that he might be too strong for him to handle. Suho decides to escape the dungeon and asks Beru if Hunter Kim is like a monarch similar to his father. Beru clarifies that Hunter Kim is far too weak to be a monarch and warns Suho that he cannot face the enemy at his current power level. Despite the warning, Suho decides to fight Hunter Kim and brings out a weapon from his inventory. He feels confident that the system gave him the quest because he has a chance to win. Suho resolves to grow stronger as quickly as possible so he can see his parents again. Meanwhile, Hunter Kim kills all the shadows with a single strike. Suho prepares himself to fight and decides to defeat Hunter Kim to grow strong even faster. Beru feels impressed that Suho does not run away even when facing such a strong opponent. He suggests cutting off the sword from Hunter Kim's hand so the sword cannot control its host. Suddenly, all 3 Lycan shadows rise and attack Hunter Kim. Suho feels surprised that the shadows got back up after he poured mana into them. Beru explains that shadows have astral forms and can recover as long as they have mana inside. He asks Suho for his opinion on the powers of shadow soldiers. Before Suho can respond, Hunter Kim kills all the shadows again. Suho looks at Beru with a confused expression after seeing the shadows get killed so easily. Beru clarifies that the shadows are weak because Suho's mana is still weak. Hunter Kim calls Suho an insignificant pest and questions how he is able to use the powers of the Shadow Monarch. Beru becomes furious that Hunter Kim dares to insult the blood of the Shadow Monarch. Suho notices that Hunter Kim can still talk, and Hunter Kim grows frustrated after realizing that Suho is the enemy of the Monarch of Fangs. Suho uses ruler's authority to attack Hunter Kim with a dagger, but Hunter Kim swiftly blocks the attack. Suho follows up with more weapons, but Hunter Kim breaks every single one of them. Suho feels excited to fight a stronger opponent and uses ruler's authority to control every weapon he has. He decides to overwhelm Hunter Kim by attacking with a large number of weapons. However, Hunter Kim destroys all the weapons and charges at Suho. Suho blocks the attack, but the force shatters his weapon into pieces. Hunter Kim strikes to finish him off, but Suho dodges every single attack. Suho knows that a single hit could end his life, and that dragging the battle any longer will ruin his chances of winning. Hunter Kim becomes furious that Suho keeps dodging his attacks and calls him a coward for running away. He further insults Jinwoo by calling him a coward who hides behind his shadow soldiers. Suho feels enraged that Hunter Kim is trash-talking his father, but still lacks confidence to defeat the enemy. He recalls a conversation with Beru and wonders why he did not regain his full power after breaking his seal. Beru explains that breaking the seal only restored his powers to the level of an infant and not the strength he had during his dream. He further clarifies that the dream was a test to see if Suho could handle his talent and that his physical strength was meant to disappear regardless of whether he passed the test or not. Beru advises Suho to recall the experiences and feelings from the fights he had in his dreams. The scene shifts back to the fight, and Suho remembers that he mostly fought with a gauntlet in his dreams. Suddenly, he gets an idea on how to fight and summons his shadows again. Hunter Kim mocks Suho by claiming that the shadows will not be enough to defeat him and charges to kill them again. However, Suho changes the form of the shadows into a gauntlet and blocks the attack. The system notifies Suho that shadow extraction has been upgraded and that he can now change the form of his shadows. Suho feels confident that he can defeat the enemy with hand-to-hand combat and continues fighting. Beru feels shocked that Suho came up with the idea to use shadows in this way and believes his aptitude for ruler's authority is on another level. Suddenly, Suho uses ruler's authority to control a dagger and attacks Hunter Kim from behind. This time, the attack successfully hits its target. Suho follows up with another attack and strikes Hunter Kim with multiple punches. Hunter Kim crashes to the ground and Suho charges at him again while controlling multiple weapons with ruler's authority. He successfully breaks the sword from Hunter Kim's hand, but in the process, the hand gets cut off. Suho feels relieved that he was able to defeat the enemy, and Beru comments that he never doubted Suho's victory for a moment. Suho knows Beru is lying, but still feels excited that he learned a new way to fight. He immediately checks his rewards and receives a rune stone for the Storm Slash skill. The system explains that the skill uses 50 mana points to create a howling wind when used with swords and can attack multiple enemies at once. Suho feels happy with the reward and wants to try it out. He looks for a sword and finds the Monarch of Fangs sword. The sword feels humiliated that it lost to the blood of the Shadow Monarch, but still believes it has a chance to win against Suho. It waits for Suho to grab it so it can control him. However, the sword fails to control him, and the system notifies Suho that the sword is actually Fang of Rakan. Suho feels excited to try the new sword and swings it hard using the Storm Slash skill. The attack completely shatters the surrounding rocks into pieces, and Suho feels impressed with the destructive power of the skill. Beru feels agitated that Suho's reaction is much better now compared to when he obtained the Shadow Extraction skill. He insists that Shadow Extraction is thousands of times better than this skill. Suddenly, Lim wakes up and asks Suho what happened. Suho tries to hide the sword, and Lim is shocked to see Hunter Kim lying next to him. Meanwhile, all the hunters and miners are evacuated from the gate. Suho informs Lim that he wants to check if there are any survivors left inside the dungeon. Lim feels confused about how Suho is so strong despite being an E-rank hunter, but still feels grateful that Suho rescued everyone inside the dungeon. Suho goes back into the dungeon and starts killing steel-fanged Lycans with his gauntlet. He senses that more magic beasts are still inside, and Beru advises him not to let the magic beasts go to waste, since they can help increase his experience points. Suho questions the sword about why it suddenly stopped attacking, and the sword responds that it does not want to cooperate with the blood of the Shadow Monarch. The system notifies Suho that the sword is made from the Fang of Rakan and has the ability to control those weaker than it. Beru mocks the sword for only being able to control weaker opponents, and the sword retorts that no one targets prey stronger than themselves. Beru confidently states that Suho defeated the sword even though it is much stronger. Suho hears this and thinks to himself that he now has a talking insect and a talking sword. Suho ventures deeper into the sanctuary of the Monarch of Fangs and finds the corpses of all the hunters. He feels bad seeing the fallen hunters, and the sword begins mocking them. Suho becomes furious and slams the sword to the ground. Suddenly, the system notifies him that he can extract the shadows of the hunters. Beru explains that Suho can turn any corpse into a shadow regardless of its kind. However, Suho decides to carry all the hunters' bodies into a cart instead. Beru feels confused about why Suho is not performing shadow extraction, and Suho explains that it would be a punishment for the hunters to fight even after death. Suho asks if the place is truly the sanctuary of the Monarch of Fangs, and Beru confirms it. Suho inquires about the other monarchs his father killed and whether they are connected to the Itarim. Beru explains explains that the Itarim are the current enemies while the Monarchs were the previous enemies defeated by his father. He further reveals that there are 9 Monarchs in total, including the Shadow Monarch, and lists their names. Suho starts sweating after hearing this and asks if his father really killed all of them. Beru confirms that the Shadow Monarch destroyed all the Monarchs who invaded Earth. The sword also confirms Beru's story and tells Suho that it would have killed him if it had all its strength and would have thrown him to the wolves. Suho reflects on the sword's actions and mentions that he understands why it killed the hunters, since it was simply trying to protect the sanctuary from invaders. He explains that it is foolish for the sword to act hostile toward him just because he is related to the Shadow Monarch. He warns that such hostility could lead to the destruction of the sanctuary. Suho promises to protect the sanctuary if the sword cooperates with the blood of the Shadow Monarch. Meanwhile, the scene shifts to an interview where Lim decides to share all the details about the incident in the D-rank dungeon. He hopes that Suho will gain recognition and be treated well. Lim sees this as a way to repay his debt to Suho for saving him. Later that evening, an article appears online describing how an E-rank hunter saved people inside the dungeon. The scene shifts to the Black Tortoise Guild, where Lee decides to hire Suho into their guild. His team feels confused about why Lee is so focused on hiring an E-rank hunter. Lee explains that it would make a great headline for their guild to recruit a hero rising from E-rank. The team contacts Suho and Lee asks his team member if Suho has agreed to join their guild. The team member informs him that Suho has declined their offer. Lee feels shocked and slightly furious that an E-rank hunter has turned down their prestigious guild. The team member explains that Suho is not planning to join any guild for now, but hopes that he might call them sooner or later. Meanwhile, the scene shifts to Suho, who is busy responding to offers from various guilds. Beru comments that many people desire Suho's talent. Suho mentions that all the guilds are trying to hire him, either as a collector or a porter. He feels confused about why so many guilds are contacting him all of a sudden, but knows that joining a guild would hinder his growth. He decides not to join any guilds for the time being. Suho wants to continue his conversation with the sword, and the scene shifts back to the moment when Suho proposed an offer to it. The sword agrees to his offer, but sets a condition. It wants Suho to carry it to another sanctuary of the Monarch of Fangs. Suho asks if the sword knows the location of the sanctuary, and the sword reveals that it can sense the location of any sanctuary no matter where it is. It explains that the gate leading to the sanctuary has already disappeared and describes it in human terms as a dungeon break. Suho realizes that the sanctuary must have turned into a field-type dungeon. It is explained that a field-type dungeon refers to land deserted after a dungeon break occurs where magic beasts still inhabit. Suho texts his uncle that he is going out and begins his journey to the sanctuary of the Monarch of Fangs. He reaches the location and feels shocked to find the place occupied by a hunter guild. Suho knows that trespassing on private property is illegal, but Beru suggests focusing on leveling up to increase his power instead of listening to the sword. Despite the warning, Suho decides to trespass and destroys the camera to remove any evidence. Beru comments that Suho resembles his monarch in how he acts without hesitation. They begin walking inside, and Suho feels confused about the fog in the field-type dungeon. Beru explains that the fog is magic from outer space, which forces the dimensional barrier to break and creates rifts on Earth. He further explains that apostles from outer space are trying to drill a massive hole to send their troops in. Suho understands that he will have the chance to fight stronger opponents in the future and resolves to become as strong as possible. He encounters many magic beasts, and the sword offers to show its true power to the young monarch. Suho admits that the sword has guts, but decides to fight without using it. He has already prepared a strategy on how to fight in his future battles and strikes a powerful punch at one of the magic beasts. He continues defeating every single one of them using ruler's authority, and finally uses the sword to activate the Storm Slash skill to kill the magic beasts with a single strike. Suho uses shadow extraction to change the forms of the shadows into a gauntlet, and the sword begins to understand the true power of the blood of the Shadow Monarch. It realizes that Suho grows stronger every time he kills an enemy and fears that they might lose the war. Meanwhile, Suho extracts 5 shadows from the magic beasts he defeated and mentions that he can now extract 5 shadows after increasing his intelligence stat. Beru responds that it is nothing compared to the tens of millions of shadows his monarch commands. Suho feels annoyed and hits Beru. They finally reach the gate leading to the sanctuary, and Suho feels confused about why there are still people at the location in the middle of the night. Suddenly, a truck arrives and a group of people is dropped off. off. The people are tied up, and Suho guesses that human trafficking is taking place. Beru agrees and warns Suho not to intervene since they are trespassing. Suddenly, Suho jumps toward the traffickers, and Beru realizes that Suho has inherited the same habit as his father and grandfather, who always act first when they see injustice. Suho's body moves on its own and kicks one of the people down. The shadows feel slightly worried about their young monarch, while the rest of the guild members are shocked to see another civilian. Suho suddenly regains his senses and feels unsure about what to do next. He knows that invading another guild's territory is illegal and quickly transforms the shadows to create a mask. Suho furiously demands to know their intentions behind kidnapping people. One of the guild members threatens Suho for trespassing and asks if he wants to die. He orders the rest of his team to attack Suho and tear him apart. The guild members charge at Suho, but he dodges every single attack. Suho recalls that the average rank of a hyena guild member is D rank and decides not to use his full strength. He punches two of them and follows up by kicking another member in the face. Beru observes Suho's growth and feels deeply moved that Suho has become so strong that D-rank hunters are no match for him. Suho feels disbelief at how easily he defeated the guild members and ties them all up. The civilians thank Suho for saving them and ask if he is from the Hunters Association. Suho covers up by claiming that he is indeed from the Hunters Association and advises them to escape while he handles the situation. The civilians leave, and Suho remains puzzled about why the Hyena Guild is kidnapping people. Suddenly, the sword mentions that it can sense the presence of a sanctuary nearby. Suho enters the warehouse and finds a series of cages. Beru also senses a faint presence in the air. They discover a puppy inside one of the cages that is barely alive. The sword reveals a shocking truth that the puppy is a descendant of the Monarch of Fangs. It explains that after the Monarchs lost the war against the Shadow Monarch, the Monarch of Fangs gave his surviving descendant a guard and evacuated them to the sanctuary. The Monarch of Fangs believed that as long as his bloodline survived, another monarch could be born. Actually, he never wished for another Monarch of Fangs, but only wanted his family bloodline to remain safe. Suho breaks the puppy out of the cage, and Beru confirms that he can sense a faint energy belonging to the Monarch of Fangs inside the puppy. Beru asks Suho what his next steps will be, but before Suho can respond, he senses a presence approaching. He is shocked to see a magic beast enter the warehouse. The magic beast is furious that the Hyena Guild members failed to protect the place. The sword recognizes the magic beast as Brocky and feels surprised that he is still alive. Suho realizes that Brocky is the guard the sword mentioned earlier. Brocky also notices that Rakan's Fang is still alive. The sword becomes enraged that Brocky failed to protect the descendant of the Monarch of Fangs. Suddenly, Brocky charges at Suho and grabs the puppy. Suho is stunned by Brocky's incredible speed. Brocky strikes Suho with a powerful hit that sends him crashing through the warehouse. Suho remarks that this is the most powerful attack he has faced recently. Beru nervously shouts that Suho's head is bleeding. Suho pleads with Beru not to shout as his head is ringing from the impact. The system notifies Suho that his resilience skill has been upgraded and increases his physical defense by 40%. Beru recalls sensing a faint energy in the air when they arrived and informs Suho that he detects Itarim energy coming from Brocky. The sword angrily questions Brocky about what he is doing to the descendant of the Monarch of Fangs. Brocky responds that it is natural for only the strongest to survive. He reveals that he has been taking the puppy's blood to gain nutrition from it. The sword threatens to kill Brocky for his actions against the Monarch's bloodline. Brocky mocks the sword by calling it a half-blood that cannot harm him. Suddenly, Suho strikes Brocky with a weapon using ruler's authority. Beru catches the puppy before it falls to the ground, and Suho grabs the Monarch of Fang's sword using ruler's authority. The first alliance between the Shadow Monarch and the Monarch of Fangs begins at that moment. Suho becomes furious upon learning that Brocky is connected to the Itarim. Brocky also grows enraged that a mere human dared to attack him and vows to kill Suho for it. Meanwhile, Beru feels depressed that he could not assist in defeating the enemy, and Suho receives a quest notification to defeat Hyena Brocky. Suho begins to understand how the guild got its name as Hyena and wonders how a magic beast managed to create a guild for kidnapping people. He suspects that the Itarims might be involved. Suddenly, the guild members plead with Brocky to free them and promise to fight alongside him. Suho does not want to let that happen, but Brocky devours their heads and kills all of them. Suho feels horrified by what he just witnessed, and Brocky coldly remarks that he does not need their help. Suho charges at Brocky to attack, but Brocky swiftly blocks it. Suho feels frustrated that Brocky kills people without reason. Brocky responds that the life and death of the weak belong to the strong. He punches Suho away and declares that strong people do not need a reason to kill. Brocky follows up with another attack, and Suho senses it just in time and barely dodges the attack at the last second. Their fight continues, and Brocky attempts to finish Suho off with his claws. The attack destroys the area, but Suho emerges from the rubble trouble and counters by activating Storm Slash. The attack lands but does minimal damage. Brocky starts laughing at Suho's weak attempt. Suddenly, Brocky gets stabbed from behind by the sword, and Suho declares that the fight is not over yet. He uses Ruler's authority to make the sword rotate continuously inside Brocky's body. The sword questions Brocky's reason for turning against the Monarch of Fangs. Brocky recalls how he once honored the Monarch of Fangs, but suddenly the thing on his body flares up and he breaks the sword into pieces. Brocky reveals that he never truly respected the Monarch of Fangs and only surrendered to his strength. Suho feels worried for the sword, but Brocky lands a powerful punch to Suho's stomach and tells him this is not the time to worry about others. Suho feels like his bones are about to break from the impact. He remembers how his father is still fighting in outer space and resolves to fight until his last breath. Suho changes the form of the shadows into a gauntlet and punches Brocky in the stomach. Their battle continues, and Beru grows increasingly worried for his young monarch. The strength of the Monarch of Fang's sword begins leaking out from its broken pieces. The sword feels concerned about the survival of the descendant and regrets leaving everything for Suho to handle. Despite its condition, the sword still wants to continue fighting. Suddenly, it notices the descendant trying to stand back up. The descendant gets inspired by Suho's determination to fight until the end and gathers its strength. The sword decides to give all of its remaining power to the descendant. At the same time, Brocky lands another powerful attack on Suho, sending him crashing into the wall. Suho struggles to stand, but refuses to give up, even though he does not know how to defeat his enemy. Brocky slowly walks toward him with a deathly gaze and comments that Suho has lasted longer than expected for a mere worm. He prepares to devour Suho, but suddenly the descendant attacks Brocky. Suho looks up and sees that the puppy has transformed into a wolf. The system notifies Suho that the descendant of the Fang can now be recruited as a colleague. Brocky recognizes the puppy as the descendant of the Fang and realizes that he has absorbed mana from Rakan's Fang. Suho understands that the sword sacrificed itself to protect the descendant and decides to recruit him as his colleague. Suddenly, memories begin to flow to Suho's mind. He sees Brocky speaking to the descendant and explaining how they lost the war against the Shadow Monarch. Brocky pats the descendant's head and remarks that the world follows the rule of survival of the fittest. He wishes for the descendant to grow stronger so the Fang family can prosper. One day, they are attacked by strange individuals, and Brocky questions why they are sparing his life. The attackers reveal that they want to use him for a purpose and place a strange item on Brocky. Brocky begins shouting in pain while the descendant watches in fear. The attackers command Brocky to capture humans and deliver them. They explain that the item they implanted will significantly increase his strength. The descendant starts crying as Brocky transforms into something unrecognizable. Suho snaps back to his senses and realizes that the beings implanted something into Brocky's eyes and turned him into this state. He wonders if these beings are connected to the Itarim and understands that the descendant does not want revenge on Brocky, but wants to stop his rampage. Suho resolves to stop Brocky at any cost, but knows he lacks the strength to defeat him. Suddenly, the system gives Suho a new quest to recruit 7 other descendants as his colleagues. A bond skill is formed with the Fang's descendant, and a bright flash of light surrounds Suho. Beru observes that his young monarch is experiencing something new, while Brocky decides not to waste time and charges at Suho. The attack is completely blocked, and Suho transforms into a completely different being. The system informs Suho that the beast possession skill has been activated, which is a type of bond skill that sharpens his senses to those of a beast. Brocky attacks again, but Suho swiftly dodges every strike. His body feels incredibly light, and his senses become heightened. Suho counters with multiple punches and lands a powerful kick to Brocky's face. Brocky feels a sense of unease, but refuses to give up as he knows that he will lose everything if he fails. He throws a powerful punch, but Suho blocks it. Beru notices that Brocky's mana has increased, and Brocky confidently declares that he will not lose to a human. He calls humans an inferior species, and the two clash fiercely. Brocky attempts to finish Suho off, and Suho counters with equal determination. The system notifies Suho that he has learned a new skill called Unarmed Combat, which increases damage to opponents by 33%. Beru becomes enraged at Brocky for insulting his young monarch and reveals that Suho is a descendant of the Shadow Monarch. He mocks Brocky, stating that there is no way he could surpass the species of the Shadow Monarch. Brocky feels shocked upon hearing this. Meanwhile, Suho lands a powerful kick to Brocky's face. Brocky collapses, and Suho returns to his normal form as the descendant emerges from him. Brocky speaks his last words, expressing his desire to become stronger. The item in his eyes shatters, and he recalls why he wants to become stronger, because he was frustrated that he could not able to save the Monarch of Fangs. The system notifies Suho that Brocky has been defeated, and Suho levels up by 2 levels. Fang's descendant feels sad about Brocky's death, and Beru praises Suho for doing a good job. Suho shares with Beru that he caught a glimpse of the memories of Fang's descendant and saw individuals implanting something into Brocky's eye. He suspects that they might be Itarim, but Beru explains that they are likely not Itarim Itarim and that the Itarim use apostles to manipulate reality. Suho feels disheartened that he lacks information about the apostles. Beru gives him hope by suggesting that he can access Braki's memories by consuming him and can also recover mana in the process. Suho frowns at the idea. He offers Fang's descendant a new place to live and invites him to come along. Fang's descendant looks at Suho for a moment and quickly understands that Suho is a kind person. Suho uses the shadow key to open a portal to the shadow dungeon and they all head inside. Beru feels confused about why Suho insists on going to the shadow dungeon instead of returning home. Suho explains that he wants to find a living place for Fang's descendant. He knows that the Fang's descendant has lost both his guardian and his sanctuary. Suho feels pity for him and suddenly receives a system notification to name the Fang's descendant. After thinking for a moment, Suho decides to name him Gray because of his gray fur. Beru notices that Suho is just like his father when it comes to naming, and Gray feels extremely happy with the name. Suho designates a forest within the Shadow Dungeon as Fang's territory and names Gray as its owner. Gray begins searching for food, and Suho asks Beru if he knows what Gray might eat. Beru explains that Gray belongs to the beast bloodline and would eat living organisms or magic beasts. Suho senses a group of goblins nearby and sees this as a perfect opportunity for Gray to clean up the area. Suho and Beru sit on a tree while Gray fights the goblins. Suho cheers up for Gray and checks his quest rewards. The system notifies him that he has obtained the title of Wolf Slaughter. Suho feels confused about the title since he defeated a hyena, but Beru advises him to ignore the trivial details. Suho looks at a quest that requires him to find Monarch heirs and make them his teammates. Beru explains that Suho's father did not have such a system, and that the level-up system created for Suho has been revised to remove all ill intentions. Suho feels confused about what Beru means by ill intentions, and Beru begins sharing his Monarch's backstory. He explains that the system's original purpose was to forcefully grow Sung Jinwoo and use him as a vessel for the Shadow Monarch. Once that goal was achieved, Jinwoo's soul was supposed to be destroyed. However, Jinwoo fought against the system's objectives and became the Shadow Monarch himself. He became a great being who no longer needed to level up. Meanwhile, Suho wonders if the current system is also guiding him to become the Shadow Monarch. But Beru clarifies that there is only one Shadow Monarch in the world. He believes the system is meant to guide Suho and help him grow in the direction he chooses. Suho checks his status window and notices that no class has been assigned to him. His stats have increased significantly since his fight with Mistburn and has gained many useful skills. Despite this, he still feels weak and knows that without the bond skill with Gray, he would have lost the fight against Braki. Suho believes the system's quests align with his goals and decides to continue completing them. Suho asks Beru if he found any traces in Braki's memories. Beru responds that he did not find anything related to Itarim, but discovered memories of humans who created the Hyena Guild for Braki. Beru reveals that the humans belong to a guild called Grim Reaper and hopes that they can uncover more about the Itarim by investigating Grim Reaper Guild. Meanwhile, the scene shifts to Lee Minsung, who receives a call from Lim Tae-Gyu. Lim questions if Lee is behind the hyena incident. Lee pretends not to know what Lim is talking about and sarcastically tells him to visit a zoo if he wants to see hyenas. Lim ignores the sarcasm and informs Lee that he already knows about his involvement with the Hyena Guild. He warns that the Hunters Association will find out about it soon. Lee responds confidently that the association cannot do anything once he mobilizes his lawyers. Lim advises him not to be overconfident and warns that the chairman of the association is not easy to deal with. He tells Lee to clean up the mess before he returns to South Korea and hangs up the call. Lee gets furious that Lim hung up after saying what he wanted. He recalls how Lim used to be his driver and feels annoyed that Lim has become arrogant after becoming an S-rank hunter. Lee breaks table in frustration and realizes that he does not have time to deal with the person who destroyed the Hyena Guild. He brings out Stardust, which is a hunter awakening stimulant, and feels confident that no one will look down on him once his business succeeds. Meanwhile, Gray finishes off all the goblins, and Beru admits that Gray is fighting exceptionally well. He encourages Gray to grow stronger so he can protect the young monarch. He tells Gray to eat as much as he wants and mistakenly calls him Growl. Suho feels happy that Gray is adapting faster than he expected. Suddenly, he receives a system notification that he gained 50% of the experience points from his teammate. He shares this with Beru and asks if this ever happened in the previous system. Beru admits that this is news to him as well and explains that Jinwoo used to gain experience points when his shadows hunted magic beasts. Suho understands that the system is functioning like a party system where he gets a 50% share of the points. He decides to let Gray continue hunting magic beasts, and Gray feels shocked to hear that he still needs to fight. effect. Suddenly, Suho receives a daily quest to clean up the Shadow Dungeon by killing a certain number of goblins. He feels excited at the thought of receiving rewards after completing the quest and realizes that he can do this every day since it is a daily quest. Suho feels stressed that he needs to find 100 goblins in such a large dungeon and checks his inventory. He finds the goblin horn he obtained after killing goblins earlier and decides to use it to summon more goblins. All the goblins gather in one place and Suho feels thrilled that his plan worked. He starts killing the goblins but quickly grows bored of fighting weaker magic beasts. Suho keeps using the horn to summon more goblins and continues killing them. As the number of goblins increases, he decides to use shadow extraction to arise a few goblin shadows, and the goblin shadows continue fighting alongside him. After 3 hours of fighting, they finally complete the daily quest, and Gray feels completely exhausted. Suho notices that the counter is still increasing even though the quest is already completed. He feels excited to fight even more goblins and decides to see how far the counter will go. Gray feels shocked to hear that he still needs to fight. After fighting for a while, Suho reaches double the required number of kills. Gray feels completely drained, while Suho feels happy that he received extra rewards as he expected. He checks the rewards and uses the status recovery to completely heal his body. He decides to reserve the status recovery for future fights and checks his second reward. He receives 3 extra ability points and moves on to the third reward. For third reward, he needs to choose between 2 random boxes and learns that his choice will determine whether he gets what he wants or what he needs. Suho feels extremely confused about which option to choose and eventually picks the random cursed box. He receives a gauntlet made from Vulcan's horn that increases physical damage to enemies by 30%. Suho feels happy that he got the item he needed most since he cannot keep relying on shadows to create gauntlets. The gauntlet feels slightly heavy, so he uses all his ability points to increase his strength to 43 points. Suddenly, Suho receives a system notification that there has been a change in his teammates' condition and that the trust level has shifted from respect to fear. Beru explains that teammates are not like shadows with infinite stamina. Suho apologizes to Gray for making him fight so much. Both of them leave the Shadow Dungeon and decide to start investigating the Grim Reaper Guild. Suddenly, Suho receives a text from his instructor Lim asking for help. Suho goes to meet Lim, and Lim feels furious that the entire collection team ghosted him. Lim asks Suho to help him as a collector and gives him protective clothing. He explains that working as a collector is more dangerous than working as a miner, since the collection team needs to gather materials from magic beasts killed by the strike team. This means they must follow the hunters very closely. Suddenly, the strike team arrives, and the leader of the team questions why there are so few people in the collection team. Lim explains that the collection team did not show up. The leader feels frustrated and calls the team irresponsible. He mentions that they paid a huge amount to secure the rights for the dungeon from the Grim Reaper Guild. He warns that he will file an official complaint with the Hunters Association if the collection team causes delays. Lim assures him that he will handle the collection work and requests Suho to summon his minions. Suho observes that the strike team mostly consists of D-rank hunters and notices that the leader is a C-rank healer. Meanwhile, the strike team enters the dungeon and encounters a large number of lizard magic beasts. The leader of the strike team instructs the collection team to stay very close to them and to collect the magic beast quickly. Lim feels uneasy about being asked to stay so close to the raiding team, while Suho sees this as a great opportunity to observe how the strike team fights. He summons exactly 7 goblin shadows and recalls that his increased intelligence stats now allow him to command 7 shadows. The strike team successfully kills the magic beasts, and the leader announces a break. One of the hunters questions why they are taking a break so early, and the leader explains that the collection team has only a few members and needs more time to complete their task. However, the leader is shocked to find that the collection is already complete and also notices all the goblin shadows. Suho gives a thumbs up to the goblin shadows for completing the task quickly, and one of the goblin shadows feels proud to be praised by his monarch. The leader questions Suho if the shadows are his summons, and Suho confirms it. Lim watches from the sidelines and suspects that the strike squad leader might be trying to pick a fight again. The strike squad leader requests Suho to become their exclusive collection team member. Suho declines and explains that he does not intend to continue doing collection work. The leader offers the highest pay based on market rates, but their conversation is interrupted when one of the guild members reports finding a human corpse. Both Suho and the leader feel shocked by the news, and the leader checks to confirm if it is truly a corpse. He realizes it is indeed human corpse, and Suho suggests that it might be a mistborn. The leader asks if mistborns are the magic beasts that burn with blue flames, and Lim confirms it based on his experience at the university. The rest of the guild members discover more human corpses, and one of them advises reporting the incident to the Hunters Association. The leader feels confident that their guild can handle the situation without any issues, since they have C-rank and D-rank C-rank awakened hunters. He insists on moving forward with the dungeon, and Suho feels shocked by his decision. Lim warns that Mistborns are far more dangerous than they realize, but the strike leader remains determined to continue. Suho quietly suggests to Lim to run away if things go wrong, since the dangers ahead are unknown. Meanwhile, the scene shifts to a group of demons who are using humans as firewood to extract energy. One of the demons notices that the fire is not strong enough and inquires about the human supply. Another demon explains that there is a supply problem and suggests asking Lee Minsung to come up with a new plan to secure more humans. The first demon commands them to act quickly, while the second demon expresses disbelief that the Hyena Guild, which was supplying humans, is now facing issues. He worries that their Stardust production might drop significantly compared to other factories. Suddenly, they sense a group of hunters nearby and feel grateful for the opportunity to use the hunters as firewood. The first demon decides to capture the hunters himself, while the second demon reminds him to bring them alive. Back in the dungeon, the strike team successfully kills all the magic beasts they encounter. The strike leader heals one of his guild members and feels pleased that they are going to earn a lot of money from the raid. He brings out a vial of stardust and shows it to his guild members. One of them comments on how difficult it is to obtain, and the strike leader explains that stardust lasts for only 1 week but can increase the rank of an awakened hunter by 1. Suddenly, a magic beast charges at them and attacks the strike leader from behind. One of the guild members worries that the strike leader might have died, but the demon informs them that he is still alive. The rest of the guild members feel shocked that a magic beast can speak. The demon attacks another guild member and counts a total of 10 hunters in the strike team. He notices that the hunters are strong and decides to use stardust to increase his own strength. The hunters feel horrified to see a magic beast consuming stardust. The demon consumes the stardust and all the hunters charge at him. The demon attacks and finishes all of them and begins dragging their bodies toward the factory. Meanwhile, the scene shifts back to Suho, who suddenly receives a new quest to save all 7 surviving hunters from a demons. Suho feels surprised by the quest and informs Beru about it. He realizes that saving more people will grant him greater rewards and advises Lim to leave the dungeon immediately. Lim feels confused about how Suho knows this, and Suho explains that it is just a gut feeling. He uses goblin shadows to force Lim out of the dungeon, while Lim worries about Suho's safety. Suho assures him that he is going inside to save the strike team, and Lim decides to contact the Hunters Association for help. Suho feels excited to fight more magic beasts and level up quickly. He activates the bond skill with Gray to transform and starts running at high speed toward the strike squad. Meanwhile, the first demon brings the surviving hunters to the factory to use them as firewood. Another demon feels surprised that he returned so quickly, and they begin arranging the hunters as firewood. The demon feels relieved that they can now produce the next batch of stardust without any issues. He brings out the stardust and explains how it works. The stardust contains an awakening stimulant derived from berserk poison and has the side effect of eating away the user's life force. However, they are mitigating this by replacing demons with mistborns created from humans. The demon thanks the apostles for teaching them how to make it and mentions that humans lose their rationality when they are used as firewood. He feels grateful that he can grow stronger this way, even though he is a low-ranked demon. Suddenly, they sense a powerful being approaching, and Suho bursts into the factory by breaking through the door. One of the demons charges at Suho, and Suho feels shocked to see a group of demons along with humans being burned alive. He notices that the strike team is still alive and swiftly dodges the demon's attack at the last second. The demon feels stunned by Suho's speed, and Suho demands to know if he is the one who killed the hunters he saw earlier. Suho lands a powerful punch that sends the demon flying. The other demons feel shocked that Suho is overpowering a demon who enhanced his strength using stardust. They decide to consume stardust themselves to kill Suho and charge at him. Suho dodges all their attacks with ease, but suddenly a demon appears behind him and electrifies him. Suho screams in pain, but manages to summon goblin shadows. The shadows attack the demons, and Suho escapes from the electrification. The demons recognize the shadow extraction as the power of the Shadow Monarch and recall how they were exterminated by the Shadow Monarch in the demon castle. They sense that Suho's shadow extraction is much weaker and kill all the goblin shadows. They feel overconfident and believe that they have nothing to fear from Suho. Suho senses that the demons are weaker than Brocky, but struggles to fight them when they attack him simultaneously. He realizes that summoning goblin shadows again would waste mana and recalls a conversation he had with Beru. Beru once asked why Suho kept Brocky's corpse around, and Suho admitted that he felt bad for Brocky of how he died full of regrets. Suho wanted to use shadow extraction on Brocky so he could continue fighting and fulfill his duty as Gray's guardian, but decided to ask Gray for permission first. Gray felt completely fine with the plan, and Suho used the shadow key to open a portal to the shadow dungeon. He attempted to extract Brocky's shadow and offered him another chance to fight on his side if he still had any regrets. Brocky responded to the the call, and Suho successfully extracted his shadow. The demons recognize Brocky's shadow and realize that Suho is the one responsible for the downfall of the Hyena Guild. Suho finally matches the number of demons with his own allies, but Beru feels sad that Suho did not include him as an ally. The battle begins, and both sides clash fiercely. Suddenly, a mysterious demon emerges through a portal, and the atmosphere grows even more tense.